Welcome to episode 6 of the 4 Out 1 In podcast with your host, George Hamilton III.
And Carlos Costas.
How you doing, bro?
Uh, I would say I feel relieved. School just finished up my junior year of college. Um, but I will say I am a bit stressed trying to pack and move everything out. So you think you get a break after school, but no, gotta move out. Got a bunch of stuff to do still. Basketball going on and everything. But all I can say is, I'm good right now. How about you?
I'm good. Just finished packing. I leave DC tomorrow to go back home to LA. It feels different to pack by myself again, but I'm ready to get back home and be in my own bed.
I feel you. I feel you. And for the people listening, be ready uh, for the video version of this podcast to be coming out on YouTube when me and George are back in Carson, California, our home city. Back in person podcast, no Zoom or nothing anymore. So be on the lookout for that coming soon.
Yes, sir. I'm excited. Well, you want to get into it? I mean, you're leading this podcast, so
Yes, I am. We are ready. Let's go to the East. Start at the top, the 1-4 matchup, the Heat Sixers game. The game is currently at halftime right now with the Sixers up 41-34. The first two games, George, talk to me.
all right, game one, the Heat played really well, and the Sixers, like I kind of expected without Joel Embiid, they played all right. Uh, Tyler Hero scored 25 and had 7 assists on 52 who's percent from the field and 66% from the three. And Bam Adebayo had 24 and 12 on 80% from the field for the Heat. And then basically the bench and the reserves filled out the rest of the scoring and did everything else defensively. And for the Sixers, Tobias Harris, he scored 27 and had 6 assists on 61% from the field. And Tyrese Maxey had 19 points and Harden had 16, but they shot below average in game one. And primarily that game was just while Jimmy Butler struggled for the Heat just did what they do best by committee. I obviously Hero and Adebayo picked up the slack for Jimmy, but the rest of the team basically took up what they were supposed to do in terms of scoring, defending, assisting. And then, as I said before this series, the bench scoring was going to be a huge portion, was going to be a huge factor for the Sixers if they wanted to compete. And I know I'm about to get into game two, but in both games, I think he outscored the Sixers bench by like 20 points. So as I said, that was always going to be a big factor. Even going back to when the Harden trade was made, they lost Seth Curry, they lost Drummond, so they lost a lot of bench scoring. And in order to beat the Heat or whoever else they were going to face in the playoffs, the bench was going to have to be a huge factor, as well as their 3-point shooting. They haven't really shot the three well outside in the first during the first two games, but we can get it. I'll get into game two as well. Game two, Jimmy Butler averaged 22, 6 rebounds and 12 assists on 53%. And Bam Adebayo had 23 and 9 on 63%. Oladipo starting, I think. Yeah, starting had 19 on 54%. And Tyler Hero had 18 off the bench on 60% from the three and 60% from the field. And Maxey had 34 points on 54% from the field. And he was mainly the real reason why Philly was in the game going into the fourth quarter. Because I kind of, during that game, I was watching and looked like Miami was going to pull away, but then like Maxey was just keeping Philly in it as like the game kind of was getting going along. And I mean, Tobias Harris has been played really well, which I mean, they really were going to need that, but they need Harden to not only score better, but be more efficient with the ball. I know he has a lot on his plate without he had a lot on his plate, I should say, without Embiid, but he should be playing a little bit better and shooting the ball a little bit better. because I don't want to say it, but his legacy is kind of on the line here after everything that's happened. And I mean, just looking at game three so far, Harden has played, I think he has like 15 points on 3 of 6 from the field. So, I mean, he's shooting efficient so far. He hasn't like taken as many shots, but he's got to the free throw line a lot, which obviously is one of his strengths. However you look at it, I mean, I kind of think he gets bailout calls at times. But however you want to look at it, he's played well so far. And then going off of game three so far, Embiid being back has kind of stifled Miami's offense in terms of how they get into the paint. I don't think Bam Adebayo is doing as much damage as he did with DeAndre Jordan and Paul Reed in on him as he did in the first 2 games. So Embiid being back is obviously a big and huge factor for the Sixers if they want to come back in this series. Your thoughts on it?
Masked Embiid. You know, NBA players notorious for going to a new level when they put the mask on. But yeah, I've been waiting to see how the Sixers play when Joel Embiid comes back for obvious reasons, just to make it a good series for everyone. And getting Kyle Lowry back this game for the Heat too is big time. I mean, Joel also came back this game, like they announced it earlier today, that they're both playing today. So I think giving it a series is going to be crazy. Hold on, going back, what do you had the Heat in 6? That was your prediction. I'm gonna agree with you. I still say the Heat in 6. Do you think the Sixers take this game 3, being up almost 10 at the half?
Mm,
At home too.
yes. If it was different, if it was, I'd say here's what I'll say. The Heat are they're in it, but they haven't shot well. And it's one of those things where they have guys who can get hot, such as a Tyler Hero or a Jimmy Butler, but like they're honestly missing. And this is a game where it would be interesting where I've noticed Duncan Robinson has basically been out of the lineup. He's been, or not even out of the lineup, just out of the rotation period. And this is a game where maybe you kind of bring him in, even though he hasn't played in the last 2 games. Maybe you bring him in a way to try to jumpstart your offense in a way in terms of shooting, because they haven't really shot the ball well tonight. And I mean, they have obviously the 6 man of the year, but if you're not shooting well and no one has shot well, I mean, you might want to switch it up before getting to game 4. And I think it was like Furkan Korkmaz for the Sixers in game 2. He came in, or game 2 or game 1, he came in and just hit a few shots and got hot going into, I think, game 2. So maybe if it's still the way it is going into the third, going into the fourth quarter, I mean, if it's close, maybe you don't bring Duncan in. But if it's like, if does become like a blowout or a convincing lead for the Sixers, maybe you bring in a guy like Duncan Robinson to just get his rhythm under him.
With that is one thing that I wanted to bring up in this series is, or in the playoffs in general, is that Duncan Robinson not playing, how given how much of a factor he was in signing the contract that he did, just shows how valuable the Heat, or how valuable he was for the Heat. But I think now watching this game, like when you look at Miami, 1 through 5 they can defend, and I think that's the reason Duncan Robinson has not been kind of falling out the rotation here in the playoffs, just so he doesn't get picked on. I know you know the clip that I'm talking about. I think it was on his own podcast, talking about how LeBron pointed at him every single possession in the finals. Like he
Oh
wanted to
yeah.
switch every single time, pointed at him, and there's nothing he could do. So the Heat definitely took that into effect. And to his credit, they're making up the scoring and shooting he provided with like Max Strus and Victor Oladipo, who's both have been playing well. So yeah, I do think the Sixers can definitely take this game right now. But yeah, I still go Heat in 6.
Mhm.
Moving on to the 2-3 matchup. This was an interesting one. Celtics Bucks. Series tied 1-1. George had the Celtics in six. I forgot what I said, but I think I might have said probably six or seven. But I do remember the last part I said that the Celtics, I don't think they lose a game at home, and they lost the first game, um, which is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of interesting because the Celtics were so hot playing, against the Almighty Nets, swap them and everything. You just thought they looked like, I mean, they look like they're damn near could have won a championship right then and there, and then they lose the first game at home to the defending champs. Uh, what are your thoughts so far on games one and two?
On in game one, that was just basically the Giannis show. If you did you watch that game? Or you probably have seen the clip where Giannis is in the post and he just bullies and muscles Tatum out the way for an easy layup. That was basically that game in a nutshell. Like Giannis just dominated, and I mean, we got a great Drew Holiday game, or I should say, an efficient Drew Holiday game, which is needed with them not having Middleton. And I mean, even though both teams kind of shot bad, it was just Giannis making plays and doing everything he could to will his team to a victory. And as for the Celtics in that game, I mean, Tatum had 21, 6 and 6, but he shot pretty bad. And then Brown, Horford, and Smart had 12. Brown had 12, Horford had 12, and Smart had 10, but all of them shot poorly. And obviously, Marcus Smart kind of got injured in game one, and then he didn't play in game two. And moving on to game two, Giannis had 28, 9, and 7 on 40%, while even though he shot 27 times. And Drew Holiday had 19 and 7 on 35%. But the key thing in this game was that the Celtics basically beat the Bucks at their own defensive game plan. The Bucks want to they force you to take threes. And in this case, the Celtics were hitting all of their threes. The Celtics shot 46% from three on 43 attempts. I think they made like 20 or 21, something like that. And then we got another great game from Tatum. I mean, he shot better this game. And then Brown had 36 and 6 on 43%. Or yeah. No, my bad. Not 43%, 61%. And then Grant Williams pitched in 21 on 50% from the field and 66% from three on 9 attempts, which is what the Celtics are going to need from him in this series if they want to win. And in this series, or in not in this series, but in this game, I should say, Giannis, the Celtics defense kind of smothered Giannis. You could tell they clogged the paint a lot in that game. And when obviously the Bucks weren't making their outside shots. So when that's kind of not working and Giannis is getting clogged in the paint, or the paint is clogged for Giannis to try to do what he does, you're going to get a game like this where the Bucks don't really play well. And if the Celtics are just hitting their shots and hitting their threes, the Bucks are kind of in that trouble range where they can't really dig themselves out of that hole. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens in game three. But if the Celtics literally just shoot the way they did in game two and kind of how they did in that Brooklyn Nets series, they should pretty much be good, as well as if they play great defense on Giannis and the others.
Are you still sticking with Celtics in six?
Yeah, I got Celtics in 6. I'm
Celtics in
confident.
six. Okay, I mean, I could see this game going to seven if anything does happen. I think both these teams are like, if either one of them drop another game, they can definitely pick it back up the next game. Given I think both these teams have grit and they fight for everything. I don't know. Udoka has shown that he makes the right adjustments after game one to game two. Coach Bud has been given, he's here and there talking about adjustments and everything. So we'll see if he can turn it around again. I mean, he's proven that he's done it before in the finals. So we got to see it games 3 and 4 going back to Milwaukee.
I mean, I think to go back to that point, I think the biggest thing for Milwaukee is if they get, I mean, Bobby Portis, I think has put in like 15 points, I think each game. If they get him, if he ends up having a 20-point game or a Grayson Allen ends up having a 20-point game similar to how he did versus Chicago, then the Bucks in either game 3 or game 4, they will have a very good chance of winning because as we've seen in the first 2 games, it's been Tatum and Brown, Tatum by himself in the game 1, and then Tatum and Brown in game 2 along with Grant Williams. So it's like if you get 20 to 25 from Drew, you get 25 plus from Giannis, and then you get either Bobby Portis or Grayson Allen with a 20-point game. This game, it could be very close. And I mean, as I said, I'm sticking to my Celtics in 6 pick, but I would not be surprised if like the Bucks end up winning in 6 or 7, just because if Grayson Allen and Bobby Portis, if one of those two or even both put up 20+ points, then the Celtics are going to need a guy like Horford or Smart to kind of do the same.
Agreed. I think on both sides, the your X factor is going to be who steps up other than your 1 and 2. Um, yeah, I'm with that. Should we move to the West?
Yeah. I mean, you want to give an update on the Heat Sixers?
Yeah. Live update. Give me a second. We're back. Uh, Sixers up 51-43 still. 7:30 left in the fourth, or in the third, excuse me. In the third. Not really much has changed in terms of box scores and everything. I mean, it was just well, like 4 minutes, 5 minutes went
I
by, but
just I just got a notification from one of the NBA people that I follow on Twitter. It says Miami is now 9 of 37 on jumpers and 5 of 19 on long twos. They have not gotten a corner 3 and they've only gotten 8 shots at the rim. So it's just a bad shooting game from Miami in terms of their performance. And then obviously Embiid being back, the paint is not what it was in game 1 and 2.
I mean, you called it. It might be time to put Duncan in, get one of the best shooters in the league hot, in a bad shooting game for the rest of the team. But uh, we'll keep we'll keep the live updates going on for the rest of the episode right now. But yeah, let's move to the West. The 1-4 Suns Mavericks. I want to say Suns versus Luca. Really, Suns up 2-0. We both had the Suns in 6. By the looks of it, maybe Suns sweep.
Yeah, I say 5. Luka's gonna get a game at least.
I mean, you would hope so. He had 45 game 1, 35 game 2. Again, he's stuff in the stat sheet. Still couldn't pull a game out, but 1 and 2. What do we got?
Before I get into my analysis, I want to hear your thoughts on something I saw on Twitter. I mean, I think Jason Kidd kind of called Luke out on like his defensive effort, which I mean, not surprising, but that's not the main thing I want to bring up before I talk about my analysis. I saw a video where it was a guy talking about how Luka Doncic isn't a superstar because he doesn't put as much effort on the defensive end, and he sort of doesn't make his teammates better. So I want to get your analysis on that, and get your opinion on that. I mean, I kind of summarized it, but that was basically what he said, is that Luka isn't a superstar player because yes, he's ball dominant, but he doesn't make his teammates better in a way.
I mean, I can definitely see where that's coming from. I don't know, just you bringing that up. I'm hearing there. Obviously, yes, he doesn't play as much defense as you probably like to, and maybe as much as he says he's a solid defender, maybe show it, especially when you're down 2-0 in the playoffs. But I mean, Jason Kidd knows exactly what it takes to go to the finals and to be that superstar in moments like that. And I don't know, that's a pretty interesting take. Calling him not a superstar is, I mean, it is fair. He is still young. I was going to say that the only accomplishments he has, rookie of the year doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, rookie of the year means nothing to like how impactful you are on a basketball court. Just the All Stars. That's all he got right now, and he's still has a long career ahead of him. But when you brought that up, I was thinking of JJ Redick's podcast, and he had JJ Barea on. Do you know what I'm about to say right now?
I think I do.
Yeah, where he said like JJ asked JJ Redick asked JJ Barea his thoughts on Luka, because JJ Redick was like, Luka is like, I've never seen anyone like him. Just giving Luka all the praise in the world. And JJ Barea said, like, he just needs to be serious. Like,
Mhm.
when he actually wants to, like, he can be like that guy, but he's like not that guy yet. I'm explaining, summarizing what JJ Barea said, and very like, it's not in depth at all, but that's basically what he was saying, that like if Luka wants to, he can. He's not there yet though.
Mhm.
um, which I do think if he wants to be that, I don't know. I mean, I'm going all over the place right now in this answer for you. Uh, but I feel like he's such like a product of like modern basketball. Like as a superstar, like it's kind of hard to watch him play sometimes. It's almost James Harden-esque with the foul baiting and getting bailed out all the time, the deep threes, the giving up backdoor cuts, complaining after calls type things. But then you check the box score, he has a 50-point triple double. So people only remember the 50-point triple double and not the other antics and all the stuff that he does. So do I think he's not a superstar? Right now, you can argue he's not, but I think when it's all said and done, he should be. Again, if he applies himself and he wants to that bad, I definitely think he does have to change how, I don't know, I don't even know how to say this. Like, I don't want to say who he is as a player, because like keep doing what you're doing, but like I don't even know what I'm saying. It's just like exactly what Jason Kidd was calling him out for. Do
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
because Jason Kidd knows, we all know um, what Luka can be and should be. I don't know if that
Oh.
answers your question. That was long and thoughts were going everywhere in my head, but that's what I got.
No, you're good. I mean, I understand. I do agree with you on that. I mean, it goes back to the whole thing, going back to JJ Redick podcast when he had Goran Dragic on. Like Luca is literally a kid in a 3-year-old's body. Like he does what college 21-year-olds do, college students and 21-year-olds do. And it's just if he becomes serious and puts on and eats, because even Goran Dragic says he eats like a 21-year-old kid, like unhealthy, right? And it's just that whole thing of if he applies himself and becomes more serious, yes, like the defense will come. Like he doesn't need to be an elite defender, because I mean he already brings so much offensively. It's just if he provides effort on the defensive end to go along with his offensive skill set and greatness, if you want to call it that, he'll make his teammates better. But going back to the whole analysis for the first two games, in game one for the Suns, Ayton had 25 and 8 rebounds on 60%. D Book had 23, 9 and 8 on 35% from the field. And CP3 had 19, 5 and 3 on 54% from the field. And then, as you said, Luka had 45, 12 and 8 in the first game. And Maxi Kleber had 19 on 5 threes, including 5 threes. And I mean, he made one more shot from the field and I think had a free throw. The Suns, I mean, that game was sort of just the Suns showing who they were all season. I mean, it was sort of like it was close, but kind of like in that 12 to 13 point range. And then I kind of turned the game off, I think, at like 5 minutes left, because I kind of knew the Mavs weren't going to come back, because I think it was like 14 points. And I mean, obviously the score, it game one, it looked close, but in reality, the Suns kind of dominated. And then as for game two, Booker had for the Suns, D Book had 34 and 4 on 58% from the field and 62% from three. And CP3 had 28, 6 and 8 and was shot 69% from the field. And then Luka had for the Mavs, at least Luka had 35, 5 and 7 on 59% from the field and 50% from the three. And that game was, I mean, that game was pretty close except until the fourth quarter where the CP3 takeover came and he just dominated the fourth by scoring 14 points. And I mean the Suns as a whole played exceptionally well in the fourth quarter as they shot 16 and 19 from the field and 6 of 8 from the three. I think they scored like 40 points in that quarter. And if you score 40 points in a quarter, I think you're guaranteed to win no matter what, especially in the fourth. When you score that amount of points, you're going to win, especially in blowout fashion, as they did. And I mean, going back to the video, at least for the Mavericks, he tried to say that like Jalen Brunson he wasn't having the same performance this round as he did in the first round. And I mean, Jalen Brunson in this series is only averaging 11, 4, and 2 on 32% from the field and 25% from the three. But I mean, going back to that first round series against the Jazz, when Luka came back, Jalen Brunson was still averaging, I think, like 24, 4, and 4, I think, on like still like 40%, I think, from the field and like 32% from three, which I mean is still kind of inefficient, but he was still scoring the ball at a great rate. But that also, his struggles on the field just come down to just missing just good shots. And I mean, I think part of that is the fact that he's now going up against good defenders in at least CP3. I mean, if you want to call Campaign a good defender, but from the games I've watched, he's just missing easy like floaters, open threes, like stuff like that. But I mean, if he gets going, I mean, who knows? But as I said, the Mavericks, I mean, I still have Suns in 6, maybe in 5, but all it takes is for the Mavericks to have the Mavericks as a whole to play well defensively and shoot the ball exceptionally like they did in the first round. And obviously Luka do what he do. So, I mean, if you want to give your thoughts on this as well.
I mean, I think for the Mavericks, if they want any type of life back left in the series, it just has to come from anyone but Luka. Um, Luka's is doing it all for this team right now, and I think someone else has to step up. Um, JB was the guy, and now he's not, like you said. So I think that's the only thing that what it is going to come down to. And then for the Suns, just to close out the series, I think all they really have to do is execute. You can't really afford to have a bad game, like bad shooting games, turn the ball over, just doing what they do and what they have been all season. They're going to close out the series, no problem.
Uh I saw an article, but I don't want to keep the podcast going for super long. So I mean, I won't be able to find it. But it was talking about how CP3, Book, and Aiton, they all have like different strengths, but they all go in sync together. And I can't remember the article, so I can't like quote it and talk about it in detail, but I just found it super interesting how it was one of those things where it happened to go together.
I mean, I can definitely see that. Um, that is true for the most part. I think those three players, like on paper, like if or I guess not on paper, but if you look at them individually, they you wouldn't really think that it gel properly at all. I don't know, not gel properly, but it's not like the most cohesive of fits when you look at it like that. But hey, my answer to that is Chris Paul is orchestrating all of it. That's my answer.
All right, you want to move on?
Yeah, let's go to the we saved the best series for last. Um Grizzlies Warriors series tied 1-1. Both both games ended great for the fans. It gave people a lot of things to watch, but let's break this down game by game, both of us. Start with game one.
All right. Game one, the Warriors won 117 to 116. Obviously, the big thing about that game was Ja missed the layup to give the Grizzlies a possible win. But in that game, Jordan Poole had 31, 8, and 9 on 60% from the field and 50% from three, as he made five of his threes and shot 10 of them. And then Curry had 24 and 8 of 20 from the field and 5 of 12 from the three. And Clay had, even though Clay struggled in this game shooting 6 and 19, he had a clutch three that gave the Warriors the win basically. And Ja had, for the Grizzlies at least, Ja had 34, 9, and 10 on 45% from the field and 36% from three. And we got a great Jaren Jackson Jr. game as he had 33 points and 10 rebounds on 56% from the field and 67% from three. And I mean, as I said, I kind of didn't watch this game because I went to the soccer game. But from the highlights I saw, I mean, it was pretty much a sort of back and forth type of game. I mean, obviously, Jordan Poole shot very efficient. And I mean, you had kind of Curry and Jordan Poole, and then Clay and Wiggins kind of sprinkled in there. And then at least for the Grizzlies, I mean, they kind of held their own, even with Desmond Bain not having the greatest shooting game and the bench not being at their best. But I mean, game one, I mean, it was pretty solid. Do you want to give your thoughts on game one?
Yeah, I was going to point out Jaren Jackson Jr. having a great game in game one, and then I'll get into my thoughts on Jaren Jackson in game two. But I want you to give us your thoughts on the Draymond Green ejection.
All right. So Draymond, I mean, I think he said it had to do with like a reputation thing, and I kind of think so as well. I mean, it wasn't a dirty play because he wasn't like trying to injure him, but the way he kind of brought him down by his shirt or by his jersey, like holding it by the front, and then it kind of looked like he kind of yanked him down. I would say that's why the refs gave it a flagrant two. So I think that's why he felt the way he did, but I wouldn't say that like it was intentional. I mean, I kind of think Brandon Clark felt that way from his quote because of what Draymond has done in the past, obviously a reputation thing, but I don't think Draymond meant it on purpose. But that was just the tipping point of this series in terms of stuff that actually happened.
Yeah, uh, I think maybe a flagrant two maybe should have been like a more minor call, but I definitely think um I mean he did it, right? Like I feel like he hit him once and then grabbed the jersey and brought him down. And even if like you're like, oh my bad, like once he's on the ground, try to help him up, you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Um, it doesn't really like take away from the fact that like he did it, which is why I think that a call definitely should be there. Maybe a tech flagrant one at most, flagrant two. I don't know about that. Maybe it is partially a reputation thing. Um, I'm sure the refs probably were just like, I don't know. I don't know what's in the refs' heads, but you can't tell me that Draymond, you can't imagine Draymond like talking to them the entire time, and they're probably fed up with him. Had that call, flagrant two, get out. Um,
All
but yeah, let's go to game two.
right. In game two, Steph had 27, 9, and 8 on 44% from the field and 27% from three. Obviously, not the greatest shooting night for him. And Jordan Poole had 23 and 5 on 50% from the field. And we had another Clay game where he struggled offensively, shooting 5 and 19 from the field and 2 of 12 from three. And then for the Grizzlies, I mean, this was basically John Morant having his breakout game of this series, most likely, having 47, 8, and 8 on 48% from the field and 42% from three. And he scored the last 15 points for Memphis in that game. I mean, the Grizzlies just played well, and they kind of, as I said, Shaw became pretty much unstoppable in the fourth quarter. But I know you're probably going to ask me about the Dylan Brooks foul.
Yeah, yeah,
All right. Dylan Brooks is foul. I mean, Dylan Brooks, yes, he is a trash talker at heart. And I do think the foul was a little bit unwarranted because of the way it happened. But I don't think Dylan Brooks is a dirty player at all. I think it was just one of those he's going for the block, doesn't completely get the ball, doesn't even get the ball. I mean, I even say that doesn't get the ball at all and hits Gary Payton Jr. Gary Payton the second, I should say. Gary Payton the second in the head. And then Gary Payton the second has a awkward landing and it ends up being that he fractured his elbow. But I don't think Dylan Brooks is a dirty player at all. But it's just the way it happened.
yeah. I agree. I think he was just one of those fouls in transition, or let me just foul him, make him earn it at the free throw line. But it's just a unfortunate situation for him. It was just like it was a lot worse than he probably intended it to be. I'm sure he didn't mean to hit GP like that. And I think the Warriors are down. Um, it's a very significant role player in their rotation with him being down and everything. Yeah, suspended for game three. I think that one was definitely warranted a suspension, given that it's way more of like a injury risk of a play than Draymond's was. So I think the refs did the right thing in terms of calling it for both sides in the way they see fit. But back to the game, let me just talk about the fourth quarter and the last couple of games. First off, I think Jaren Jackson Jr. Great game in game one, but I think it's pretty crazy, even like in the regular season or like in the first round, that he kind of, I want to say he kind of gets played off the floor in the fourth just because he can't stop fouling. I think in that one he had like five, so you're putting in Brandon Clark in that situation. So I think that's it. That's something that the Grizzlies need to think about just in the future, long term offseason decisions, stuff like that, or just something Jaren Jackson has to improve on. But I think he could definitely be a game changer in the fourth if he learns to stop fouling to keep himself in a game. But I think the Grizzlies. I know Ja had a good game, but I kind of think they lucked out. The Warriors went on a run in the fourth, and then uh, Steph said it in his post game interviews, just saying that he had a couple boneheaded turnovers, which I agree with. I think they definitely lucked out with the Warriors kind of fumbling the ball and Ja just hunting the right matchups every single time, get into the bucket, given they don't really have a paint protector that could stop him when he gets that high up like that. But I definitely think I want to say they looked out. It was just Ja playing hero ball and the Warriors just turning the ball over. I think the Warriors come uh, back in the Chase Center and take a couple back. So before we end the podcast, just wanted to give you guys um, a live update on the Sixers game. It's currently 10 minutes left in the fourth. Sixers are up 72-65. For Miami, Jimmy Butler is doing it with 24 points, 9 rebounds. And for the Sixers, Danny Green got hot, shooting 6 for 7 from three, 18 points. Currently, right now, PJ Tucker is getting into it with Matisse, and he's just getting into everyone. I've been checking over at my screen the entire podcast, and PJ Tucker is he's been running his mouth a little bit. Um, just predictions before this game ends, real quick from George and uh, the Suns game later tonight.
I got the Suns winning tonight, not gonna lie, so we can just start there. And as for this Sixers game, I do think the Sixers was gonna win, but you know how PJ Tucker is. PJ Tucker is just trying to fire up the Heat. They've struggled offensively all game compared to the first two games, so that him getting into it with Matisse Thybulle is just trying to fire up the team, bring some life into the team, Maybe they make a comeback with 10 minutes left. I mean, they're only down like what, 7 or 8. But even if they lose, it's just to get some morale up for next game.
Yeah, I agree. I say Suns take it. Um, Part of me really wants to change my prediction and say the Suns sweep, but that's a homer opinion, a homer take by me. But uh yeah, do we think Philly can close this one out tonight?
I do. I think so.
Yeah, I think especially they're at home. You got Joel back. Uh, Frustration from PJ Tucker in the Miami Heat. I definitely think they close it out. So that does it for the 4 at 1 in podcast. I'm your host, George Hamilton the third.
And Carlos Costas.
Signing out. Catch you on the next one.
For sure. See ya.